What's going on, guys? CJ here, and in today's video I want to do a breakdown of what I consider the best tanks in Lord of the Rings Heroes of Middle Earth. So let's go ahead and dive into it. All right, guys, so I thought this would be a fun video to make, and actually one of the viewers made a comment about this and I thought it'd be kind of fun. So I've made videos in the past, or not videos, I made specifically a video on Haradrim and kind of looking at them as a holistic team and how their kit works together and which ones you should upgrade, etc, etc. And I do want to make a video like that again in the future, but on the other teams like Rivendell and, you know, so on and so forth, Thorin's Company, whatever. But what I thought would be interesting to do is looking at the tags on the characters in the game. So we have 4 specific tags that they're sort of categorized in. You have a tank, you have a healer, you have a support, and you have an attacker. So I thought it'd be fun to look at each of these 4 categories. So today we'll look at tank, and then over the next couple of days, I'll sort of break down the other categories, attacker, healer, and support, and kind of do a top 5, and I'll have some bonuses in there as well, because I could probably do a top 10 and, you know, just have 10 there instead of doing 5 plus bonus. But I figured let's leave it to the top 5 that I kind of think are the top 5 best in the game. And remember, this is subject in broad category. Again, thinking from like how easily can you get these characters, how many people are actually using them. There are things in here. Perfect example would be like a Bomber, right? Looking at Bomber right now on the screen, I think he's like one of the best characters in the game, let alone just a tank, right? So he'd probably be in the top 2, top 3. However, you can't farm him, and you can't even buy farm him anymore because he's out of the store, and there's no way to get the character because they haven't updated the goddamn game. But you know, so he'll probably be, you know, in my bonus bucket, but until he's farmable and a lot of people are using him, I'm not going to put him into like the top 5 right now. I want to keep it to the characters that you can actually go after, especially if you're a newer player and you're watching my videos. I don't want you to be like, oh man, all the best characters in the game are all locked behind paywalls. Like, these characters are still very good. They're easily top 5, top 10 regardless, and they're not locked behind. Literally, Bomber is not even in the game at this point, right? There's no way to get that character. He's completely gone. Normally by now they would have moved into a gem currency, so still pay to win character, but like, I mean, he's not even there. He's just gone. So anyways, I thought it'd be fun to kind of do a breakdown of these characters, give my opinion of where they kind of land. And I want to get back to making like content that is more supporting the game and sort of talking about the game more specifically around just raid content, roster reviews, whatever it might be, right? A lot of the videos, even from myself and other content creators, have been very heavily focused on the lack of communication. And although it's very frustrating and there's not really any way around it at this point, we're all just kind of beating the horn in the Discord and everywhere else possible. And you even have some content creators outside of this game now bringing up the concerns and mysteries behind why we've heard nothing. I'm hopeful that it literally is just a long extended vacation, or possibly some changes in their organization where maybe there's a new community manager or whatever it might be, right? We don't know. They've said nothing. And I just don't want to keep beating the horn discussing this issue, because although it is a big issue and it's concerning, and someone who's making content for the game, is there even going to be a game to support for content next week? Who knows? We don't know. We've heard nothing. But I don't want to just keep making videos being very pessimistic and just down about the game because we have nothing to discuss, because there's no new filler content. I like to just kind of keep making content that is supportive of the game and stay optimistic that the game will have a future. And I know it looks bleak, but until we're told otherwise, I'm going to assume the game is still existing, especially again with the EA earnings. The game is on their slide, so clearly they're not trying to like hide the game or just make the game go away. I think if it was, they'd probably try to hide it a bit more than showcasing it as a 2024 game. So I think the communication sucks, but anyways, I don't want to keep hounding on it. I like to just kind of continue as if the game is going to live on. All right, so for starters, I will reference a little bit of where they sort of stack up overall as a character in the game, not just tanks. I wish there was a way to do this. So LotR.gg is a really good resource site. It has a lot of stuff in there, and we can actually tab over to it. So this site right here has a ton of information, and I like the stat screen because it starts, and I'll leave it as status quo. It's a level 60 character, gear tier 10, 7-starred. This is their baseline stats. This is not including any glyphs. This is not including anything that buffs up their power. And I believe this is also not accounting for the passive buff for large characters. So this is baseline, absolute baseline stats, right? So with this knowledge, it's interesting. Again, I wish I could like put a filter in here. I just don't know how to do it, but put a filter in here over here that I could say I just want to look at the tanks so I can like see where they kind of rank amongst one another, but you can't, at least as far as I know. So again, if you're looking at it and you're kind of going down the list, again, this doesn't make them like a very strong OP character or anything like that, but it's interesting to see sort of where some of these characters fall in. So there are 19 tanks right now in the game. So if we just take a quick bounce back to the game, you can see here are your 19, right? Obviously, we're not going to talk about all 19. Obviously, some of these characters in the future could be very strong if teams are built out where they might not have a full squad yet, etc. But as of today, recording the video in February 2024, we'll break down my top 5 and some bonus characters. But if we tab back over to LotR.gg, just a quick kind of like call out that I thought was sort of interesting is if we're looking at HP, which is a pretty important character for a tank to survive and stay alive, you can clearly see right at the top of the board, you got Bomber as the #1 HP pooled character, and he's got quite a large margin over some other characters. I mean, Halbarad is #2, which is, again, a very good character, and somebody where a lot of people thought was the best character in the game when the game first came out, and then as time went on, they sort of realized he's not like the best character in the game, still absolutely strong, but he's in the worst store in the game, the challenge store, so he's like, you just don't want to farm that store. And a lot of people are farming Tabeb over Halbarad because they want Harajam, who's a very strong chapter 2 team and just overall pretty good top probably 3 overall team in the raids. So you're just not really taking that minimal resources you're getting on a 9-month grind to put into Halbarad when you're probably going to put it into Tabeb. So he's just not on a lot of people's rosters. He's probably not going to be on anybody's roster if you're probably in the same time frame I started playing about 6 months ago, or newer, like later, right? If you started playing this back when the game came out, you maybe farmed him for a couple of months and then maybe pivoted, maybe you stayed to him because you already put so much time into him. I don't know. But anyways, point here is you can see there's like significant drop off in HP pretty quickly. So Bombers get 60, almost, 60k. Then it goes to Halbarad, then it goes to the Great Goblin, which Great Goblin's going to have probably even more than Bomber when you account for the 15% buff that these large characters are getting. So between the Great Goblin and Gruher the Brute and Ironhide, which Ironhide is much less, but between all those big buffs, they do bump up quite a bit into that high 50s, low 60s bucket. But then after your Bomber and Halbarad, who are like non-large characters, highest health pools in the game, then your 3 large characters in the game, it immediately falls down into the 40s bucket. So huge drop off. But if we're looking at tanks specifically, the #1 HP pooled character in the game is Bomber, followed by #2 Halbarad, #5 Ironhide, and then #8 Ugluk. So Ugluk is up there as well, worth considering because he is a very good tank character in this game and a part of the Isengard squad. If we're looking at armor, so that's another big one, right? So if you're looking at the armor pools of characters in this game, which again, armor is a very good way to stay alive and take less damage, you have some big tanks again in here. So you have Gimli at #2. You have Rumiel at 7. You have Ugluk again at 8. So coming in at 8 at both HP and armor. So very, very hard to kill character. And then #10, you got Eladin, which he's an elf. He's kind of got some pretty decent speed and he's got pretty good survivability on his armor side. And then the other one that was interesting was Resistance. So Resistance, you actually have Eladin at #7. So as a tank, he's got some pretty good resistance. Really only followed by Rumiel down here at about #12 or 13. I just kind of point out some of the characters that are sort of on my list for this video today. Of course, there's some other tanks in there that weren't necessarily called out that might have been in that top 10 squad, but the character like Boromir, for perfect example, is the #1 highest each armor pooled character, or tied with Gimli. And they both have some serious armor before you sort of dive into the next tier, right? And it really falls off, after your top 3 here with Tordok, Gimli, and Boromir. Just downhill quick. So armor penetration, especially if you're like in a Gimli meta or like a Gondor meta, worth considering Armor Piercer because those guys are just not taking damage. So anyways, I thought it'd be kind of interesting to look at that, and then I wanted to share it so you kind of understand where my numbers are coming from if I'm referencing anything while I go through these characters. So let's go ahead and go through my list. So coming in, we'll just kind of go right down the list. I wouldn't necessarily say these are in an absolute 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in any such fashion, but do realize, you kind of know which ones are going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But if I had to put them in a top 5, we'll start at #5. So coming in at #5, I have Webete. So Webite is a Haradrim tank. He's a very good early game character to farm if you're newer to the game, because you can get him from the guild store, right? So that store, there's a few characters in there, but Webite is probably, you know, a lot of people's priority first farm, especially if you're interested in Haradrim. There's no reason not to go after Webite, because he is a very good early character to start putting investment into for the long-term haul of Haradrim, but also a really good tank character to have on your account or your shadow campaign grind. So I would put him at number 5 because of that, but not just because he's an easy farm and because he's Haradrim. He also has a very interesting kit. So specifically, Horizontal Slash is a fantastic ability because it's an AoE, which AoEs are just kind of king in these types of games, whether it be not necessarily chapter 2 or chapter 4 of the raid because it's a single target attack, but chapter 1, chapter 3, AoEs always come in clutch because there's multiple characters to hit. And then the same thing is going to go for PvP, because anytime you can attack everything, fantastic, right? You're putting damage to everybody. Webite is a great character. And the other thing that really makes this ability insanely good is the fact that it inflicts a 2-turn slow. So anytime you can slow the enemy or increase your turn meter or slow their turn meter, and you're doing more, is just a net win in an event. Like, it's like a speed type ability in these games, right? It's a way to come out on top. So I would say that Webite is a great character for that specific reason. All right, so then coming in at number 4, I've got our buddy old pal Ugluk, the Isengard leader, and another really, really good early game character to get your hands into. He's got a fantastic kit that works well with his leadership ability, but the thing that makes him really good is that he is your first node unlock in your chapter 1 guild campaign. So anytime you can have a guild campaign character is a nice bonus, because you can farm them very, very quickly to max level. So you can kind of see I already have him at G7 and 7-star. I just haven't clicked the button for 500,000 because not only do I not have the button for 500,000, but he's also just not a character that I want to put the investment into quite yet. But if you're looking at his kit and why I consider him to be pretty strong, he has a dual assist with Mauer. And Mauer has an assist ability back to Ugluk, so they do get that kind of double attack, which is great in chapter 1. You're focusing the bomber, but just in general, it's nice to get like a kind of double attack, right? Like, it's just a nice thing to have in these types of games where you can attack multiple times to do more damage. The other thing is his I Am Ugluk ability is a very, very nice passive healing ability, because one of the things the Isengard squad kind of really lacks and makes him not a great investment, in my opinion, as a long-term investment, because they're not that good as an Isengard team. But you just get your hands onto them so early on that they're kind of worth still considering in this game, just because, again, as a newer player, these are sort of the characters you're getting your hands on at first, and they're not bad characters long-term. They really aren't, especially Ugluk. He's a very good character. And again, as you can see with his passive, the focus is fantastic to add, because like you want to land those Banes, and they're a Bane focused heavy team. So having that additional focus to all members is just a nice plus. But what's really good is the extra health he gives out every time anybody on the Isengard squad is inflicting a Bane. You're getting some slight, very minimal, 2.5% is not fantastic, but you're getting health to your team. And if I do actually upgrade it to tier 5, it's not 2.5%, it's actually 5%, which 5% is double 2.5. So it's significant increase that it's probably worth considering doing, but it's one of those abilities that actually does cost our lovely epic mats, because it is a leadership ability. So not going to do it now, but again, a great character. A lot of people will have your hands onto them early on, and somebody that I think is easily worth a top 5 position, and I have him at number 4 on my tier list. All right, guys, so coming in at number 3, we've got our buddy old pal, our Rohan trio, Eothane. So Eothane is definitely on my list as a top 5 tank in the game, because one ability that I specifically love, and I think there's only one other character in the game that offers this, is at maxed level, his Sentinel stance gets you 4x provoke stacks, which is awesome, just to really annoy the enemy on what they want to do, because they're forced to hit Eothane. So good in PvP, really good if you're just trying to force some stuff to happen, even in PvE. Either way, it's a great ability to have. So that would be coming from his Sentinel stance at max. It also offers a 20% turn meter to the team. So fantastic ability maxed out. Spear Rohan is also really, really good. It offers at maxed out, it offers a 2-turn expose, which is fantastic for going through armor. So again, those very, very high armor characters like Gimli is great to just kind of get through them, but also again in your PvE, so anything with high armor like Cave Troll, just way to offer more damage for the team because of the exposed put onto the character. The other thing that makes him great, he's a light campaign 1-1 node, so a character that everyone has access to the minute you start playing this game. So he's going to be a part of your squad early on. The Rohan trio is a fantastic squad as a team, even though they're not quite a full squad, you could say, as in a full 5. They do have 5 characters, but no one really runs Wilfen and Eldred. I do think Wilfen's a sleeper. She does do a lot of good damage. So I think if somebody has her built out, I'd be curious to understand how good she is if you did like a Rohan 4. I still think Eldred is a very bad character in this game and needs a buff. I don't know if having Eldred on the squad, just because it has the Rohan tag, will make this team better. I still think you'd probably plug in somebody else, especially since as a full squad together, the Rohan has the leader ability from Lady Eowyn, which is just a small increase in crit chance on only attack. So it's not even really that important to be like a full team that offers a full team passive that does a whole lot for the full squad, right? So I would tend to say like you don't need the Rohan 5 to be very efficient, but I would be curious if anyone was running Wilfen and decided, but these 4 together are actually super good. But anyways, going into our number 2. So number 2 is interesting. It's going to be our buddy Ironhide. Ironhide is interesting because not only is he going to be the one and only on this list that's a large character, he's also one of the ones that is more just kind of a plug and play and isn't really used as a Mordor faction specific character. Not to say like you wouldn't use him with the Mordor team, but not a lot of people are running Mordor because they're not a super good team. I do think they're going to be actually okay in PvP. If you have Mordor built out, and when we do get multi-squad PvP, I do think Gaz Ironhide is going to be pretty good to just kind of plug with them, but he's not bad either if you're kind of running your Rohan trio. You're kind of just plugging in your Ironhide because you put investment into him, and they're just like a 5th member, maybe some kind of a support or another healer, just to kind of add a little bit more sustain to the group. But what makes Ironhide a very good character is, again, he's one of those very easy early on Chapter 1 guild campaign farms. You can kind of get him up very quickly. He has 2 AoEs in his kit, and he has one of the only abilities in the entire game. Maybe another character has this, I'm not really sure, but his ability, Taste of Iron, is fantastic because it's an AoE that actually dispels a boon from the enemy. So again, good in the raid, but it's just an attack that dispels a boon from everybody. So very helpful in PvP and in the raid. Again, Rampage is also going to be an attack all enemies ability, so having the double AoE on a large character, very nice to have in the game. So I would put Ironhide definitely in that top 5. I have him as my number 2 pick. And coming in at number 1, probably not really a surprise for many, is going to be your buddy old pal Eladin. He is your Rivendell tank. Rivendell is probably the best faction in the entire game. He just works so well and synergizes. The Rivendell as a whole synergizes very, very well with just kind of putting all the boons and then getting buffs because of the boons, giving out more damage and more everything, right? But specifically, Eladin works very well with Elrond. And then again, as a tank, he just offers a lot to the team. His ancient skill definitely comes in as one of the better abilities for him because of the provoke stacks. He does come in at a low end of just having kind of 1 provoke before you get to that 4th tier. So as a tank, you kind of want to have that constant pressure on him and not the rest of your team, especially since it's very important to keep Elrond alive. This is a way to do that. Then you have characters like Elro here, who works very well with Eladin, because if you have him built out, you can get the constant kind of like retaliate or counterattack when anytime he's attacked, and while you've got the provokes up, he's getting attacked a lot. And then again, his last kind of passive here is when he gains 1 stamina for this ability per boon on self. which works very well with Elrond and the whole kind of boon sort of process. Again, that goes with Lomian. It's shared across the whole Rivendell squad, but it's an AoE that's a provoke. Very nice. It has a very, very high end resistance, which probably isn't super important all the time, but nice to know that he's a tank with a very high end resistance. So just another one of those kind of like little just extras in this character. He's not super slow because he's an elf, so he kind of just gets that like kind of decent mid-tier speed in his kit. You know, he's got decent armor. He's a very, very good character. And again, another character that's super easily farmable as a chapter 1 guild campaign farm. So you can see kind of the trend here. A lot of these characters in my top 5 list are not only very good characters, 3 out of the 5 are guild campaign characters in chapter 1. Then you have Eothane, who's your first unlock light side campaign unlock chapter 1. And then Webete is a guild store farm. So very easy characters to get your hands onto and really start to take advantage of their kits and kind of be just great tanks that sort of work well with their factions, their Rivendells, their Haradrims, their Isengards, their Rohans, but then just are actually just good tanks. If you need a tank or a human tank, or you need a light side tank for your campaign side or a shadow side, you have your options. So very interesting. These are kind of the characters that I would probably put as my top 5. But then a couple of bonus picks that I did want to touch on. So kind of my top two, I actually have 4 bonuses here that I like to kind of dabble into. So my top 2 bonuses are going to be your latest unlocks, or sort of your later unlocks, in Bomber and Rumiel. So Rumiel, I'm a huge fan of. I think he's going to be a top 10 character in the game. I think Bomber's a top 5 character in the game. So not even slated as tanks, but just straight up characters in the game. Bomber's kit is insane. He's a fantastic defensive PvP character. He's also just a good character because he has so much in his kit. So you kind of need this character fully built out. So he does take the investment. You really want this to be like 4-6. So you really need to put the investment in this character. But he has so much going on. Dwarven Rhythms, you're offering Disrupted, which is characters can't receive boons, and Haste for your team, so your speed's increased. And you can see that when you do this, you're getting literally in this character, right? Disrupt and a 2-turn haste. So very, very annoying for the enemy team, especially if you're going up against like Rivendell, who are really big on trying to put boons on characters, and you're pretty much telling them, no, you're not doing it. And we're going faster, more turn meter, just more speed for your team. Good counter, very good counter. He's a dwarf, which again, dwarfs are great if you want to kind of plug and play with your Thorin's company across the board with Thorin and other just very good kind of dwarves. He also has Brilliant Blunder, which is an AoE 2-turn slow, so similar to Webete. So just like another kind of build to him. And then Well Rested is an interesting mechanic, kind of really like the design here of him. So he's got the whole sleep stacks that he gets on his turn, and at the end of the turn, so he comes in with the sleep stacks. Then at the on turn, it converts sleep into a stamina distributed to any of his abilities. At the end of the turn, he gets more sleep stacks. But if he's stunned, he kind of loses this. So getting stunned is a problem, but I mean, it's just kind of like a nice, cool, passive mechanic that was built into his kit and does create the ability to kind of do a lot more often because of course, if there's not any stunning happening, you're kind of constantly getting an additional stamina on a random ability throughout the entire phase of a fight. So very cool, interesting character, huge fan of him, and somebody that I will invest into when he's farmable. The other one that I put in that same boat, and I'm just patiently waiting for him to become a farmable character in this game, is Rumiel. So Rumiel, again, don't really have much invested into him. He's one of the characters I actually put money into in this game, where I did buy his $20 pack to get him to 4-star off the rip. Been waiting to get him to a farmable state, but again, he's kind of a weird tank. He's like an off tank in the sense that he doesn't have a taunt or a provoke in his kit, but he has a lot of defensive and a lot of regeneration, and he's just kind of like a good attacker with a tank tag. So interesting character, interesting design without like really going into your normal tank design of provokes and taunts to kind of keep the focus on him and not the rest of your team. That's kind of the bucket he's in. He comes with a ton of armor. He's, you know, top 10 character in the armor bucket. He's got the elf tag, but he's also got a lot of abilities that support dwarves. So again, he's a very, very good character to throw onto a dwarf or elf team, and you know, so that kind of gives him a little bit of more synergy. I mean, he is a balanced expedition character specifically, but he would work well with really any of the elves or the dwarves to really just kind of flex in there. I kind of think of him as like an off tank because again, he doesn't have that direct tank provoking and taunting, but he does offer a lot of regeneration, a lot of defensive for himself and for his team. And then just kind of rounding it out again, so some other kind of secondary bonus characters that are also just very good, and we'll kind of wrap this video up, is if you're newer to the game, you probably haven't done much of any investment into our buddy Halberad, including myself. I actually have him at 3-star without putting anything into him. This is just kind of the luck of the draw that I've had over the course of my account on getting him randomly from either the web store or just bonus chests. So pretty excited that I've gotten to a 3-star with literally not a single currency put into him from the store, from the challenge store. But Halberad early on in the game was considered one of the best characters, and he's still very good. The problem for him is he's in a terrible farming store, and so most people are not going to probably go after him. They're going to go after Tibeb or spend their currencies on essences in that store, depending on where you are at this point in the game. And I would tend to say you're better off farming the Haradrim, just because the Haradrim is a very good team in the raids, so they're worth kind of going after, even though they require a ton of investment. But Halberad is an interesting character because he's a tank with a ton of healing for himself and for the team. So he's a very good plug and play character. And I also think if the Rangers ever become like a meta team, that can really be a team that you want to use the Ranger tagged characters like your Striders, etc., for him and his kind of team as a whole. I do think like you would definitely start to consider Halberad a part of that team with his passive for the Rangers. So Halberad's kind of in that bucket. And then the last character is going to be Gimli. And Gimli's another fantastic character because he's a little bit later in the guild campaign, but another easy farm once you get your hands onto him, because guild campaigns are one of your best friends in this game for getting stars on characters. And I love his kit. He is the epitome of a tank in this game. He has a ton of armor. He has good HP. He's a dwarf tank, what you just think of when you think of a tank character in the game. And I love his abilities. This one's just insane. Dwarven Defiance. Look at all the stuff you're getting. Look at when you get into a 6-star. At 6 stars, you're getting 4 stacks of provoke, 2 stacks of defensive, 3 stacks of regeneration to 4 of your most wounded allies. Like, this guy offers so much for himself and for the team from a defensive stance, from passive healing, defensive, and provoke, right? Just a ton of just value on this character for him and his team. And then Son of Gloin, another fantastic passive where it does retaliation attacks. It also grants more provoke. So he's just one of those characters you just can't get through. And from like a defensive side, you throw him in with another tank, you just can't do anything but constantly attack the tanks, which then just creates that whole timeout sort of meta in PvP at the highest ranks, where you just can't do anything because you're constantly attacking the tanks because they just keep provoking you. Like him with an Eothane is just frustrating as hell. Him with an Ugluk, him with any other provoking or taunting tank is annoying as hell. But he's also just great because the Fellowship is a good team with Legolas and with Gandalf. So if you've unlocked Gandalf or on your way to unlocking Gandalf, easy investment into Gimli. Really good character, and someone that, again, out of your 19 available tanks currently in the game, is somebody that I think is awesome. So let me know what you guys think. Those are my top 5/top 9, I guess, tanks in the game that I would put as your focus or your priorities before kind of diving into anybody else. But again, it really goes into what you're most interested in doing in this game. If you're like a diehard Road to Rivendell team, maybe you want to go full on in on that, you grabbing yourself a Sam. Maybe you're a big Nazgul fan and you wanted to invest in the Black Beast, which not farmable yet, but just making it up. Another one in here, you know, Fro for the Dwarf Squad, Boromir if you're a Gondor fan. None of the tanks are absolutely terrible. I mean, some of them are definitely worse than others, but needless to say, the top 5 that I have are definitely characters that anyone and everyone are probably already farming. So no major surprises here in my top 5, but that's probably to be expected. So I would say if you're newer to the game and you're wondering who you should put your investments into, the top 5 also are my top 5 in my account, are the ones that I would be putting my resources into. So let me know if you liked the video. Like I said, I plan on doing a similar sort of series for the other tags in this game, and I plan on releasing those over the course of the next few days. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.